Alrighty, guys, welcome back. Earlier, we were discussing Mike Tyson to face Jake Paul in an exhibition fight, and now we're going to be discussing Russell Wilson, who is interested in playing for the Steelers, but the Steelers may not be totally interested in him. But before we do that, I just wanted to ask that you guys like and follow the show. We get a number of questions from viewers that come in during the show, so to ensure that your question gets read on the air, I ask that you use the tips and donation link with your question. That link is GSMCPodcast.net. This puts your question at the top of the list so that I can see it, and then it also just really helps the show. Alrighty. Alrighty.
So go ahead with the story. Let's see what's going on.
So, Russell Wilson is interested in playing for the Steelers, but they may not be totally interested in him. Pittsburgh Steelers GM Omar Khan did an excellent job of saying a lot of words with little information in terms of the Steelers quarterback situation at last week's NFL Combine. If you were Kenny Pickett, Mason Rudolph, or an outside option, you listened to that presser and felt like you could be a quarterback for the Steelers in 2024. However, sources have told A to Z Sports that one of the outside options interested in joining the Steelers is former Super Bowl champion Russell Wilson. So, all signs point to the Steelers being fully vested in Kenny Pickett as their starter in 2024. As Jeremy Fowler of ESPN said in his column following the NFL Combine, Pittsburgh feels that Pickett's injuries and the lack of infrastructure around him have prevented him from getting a clear view of what he can be as a quarterback. But Pittsburgh is going to address the position. Kenny Pickett is the only quarterback under contract in 2024, with Mason Rudolph looking to test the free agent waters. Should Rudolph sign somewhere else, Pittsburgh will look to sign a veteran backup at a cost-efficient salary. Insert Russell Wilson on a league minimum deal, and that works. But Wilson isn't looking to be a backup, and sources can't confirm whether or not Pittsburgh will be willing to sign him under the pretenses that he can compete for the starting job. They're okay with a strict backup role, however. Wilson is allowed to start speaking with the team now that he has been released from the Broncos, but he can't sign until the new league year officially begins on Wednesday, March 13th.
Okay. First off, Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh used to be the organization that, championship or bust.
Mm-hmm.
Pittsburgh always contending for the championship.
Right.
Now, I just feel like Pittsburgh is just happy to be like, we showed up.
Here's your participation ribbon,
Yeah, it's kind of, I kind of feel like Pittsburgh's just happy to be invited to the party. They're just happy to be at the prom.
Yeah.
They're not like, hey, I want to be prom king. I just want to go to prom. I got a date for prom. I'm going.
Yeah.
It's like Pittsburgh has just turned into the mediocre franchise where they're just stuck in the middle.
Yeah.
Happy just making the playoffs. And guess what? If y'all in Pittsburgh just want, and Ohio too, because I grew up smack dab in the middle between Pittsburgh and Cleveland. So a lot of Steeler fans are from Ohio as well, a lot. Mm-hmm. And so I know a lot about Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh they're just team okay.
Mm-hmm.
They should, it's not the steel curtain. It's just a team okay. They're going to win a couple of games. They're good for 8, 9 games. They get lucky. They may fall into a 10th game. They barely make the playoffs, and then like, oh shucks, we'll get them next year. We'll dust Kenny Pickett off next year, and we'll go for another 8 wins and 9 wins again.
Mm-hmm.
What about Kenny Pickett has showed you like, hey, this is our guy. This is the guy.
Clearly not a lot.
Kenny Pickett spent the end of the year at home as they watch Mason Rudolph be their quarterback. This offseason, what has been the big conversation with the Pittsburgh Steelers. Their own players are like, we want Mason Rudolph back. We want Mason Rudolph to be the starter. We want Mason Rudolph. Do you think Kansas City's like, we really want that other guy other than Patrick Mahomes?
No.
or you think the Texans like CJ Strauss? Nah, we want that backup. Mm-hmm. You know when you got a dog.
Mm-hmm.
But
he's
not a dog.
If your own teammates are like, yeah, we want the backup. We don't want the guy who was originally supposed to be quarterback. We want the backup. That should tell you a lot about
the own players. This is not just Andrew Tate telling you guys, hey, no, I think they should go with Mason Rudolph. No, their own. It isn't a fan. We're not talking about a columnist or some YouTuber. No, we're talking about Pittsburgh Steelers players are like, hey, can we get some more of that Mason Rudolph? And we don't need it. We didn't heard all the Pickett greatest hits. The Kenny Pickett greatest hits. I don't know if I want that album anytime soon. I'm not downloading the Kenny Pickett new album coming out because there's no hits on there.
Mm-hmm.
He's a decent, in my eyes, you are doing something right. If you had a starting quarterback and you had Kenny Pickett as your backup. Now, do I think this is I think this would be a perfect landing spot for Russ.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to go as far as to tell you, I personally think even if they were like, hey, Russ, we'll take you as a backup. If I'm Russ, I'm like, sure, I will do it.
Because he doesn't have a job right now.
Well, no. It's kind of one of those situations where it's kind of like, I'm just going to sit here and just wait on Kenny Pickett to do Kenny Pickett things.
Yeah, I guess that's true. Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's kind of like if you're just Kenny Pickett, he's an okay quarterback, but he's not the franchise. Now, Pittsburgh, there's certain quarterbacks that need time to develop. And Kenny Pickett has progressed, and he's progressed a little bit, but not fast enough.
Mm-hmm.
Bringing him in, keeping Pickett, but bringing in Russ, who is a consummate professional. Some of the knock on Russ is, the knock on him is he's too nice.
Mm-hmm.
Russ is going to bring you over. He's going to be like Broncos country. Let's ride. Let's go. Let's do film, Kenny. Let's watch this. He's going to help him here, help him there, give him some pointers. But Kenny Pickett doesn't need to be your starter. Let him sit on there and marinate. Let Russ cook, Kenny marinate. Okay? That's what I'm saying. Because, I'm sorry, just rinse and repeating what you've done, which is Kenny Pickett and Mason Rudolph, just means 8 wins, 9 wins, 10 wins, maybe even 7 wins.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry. I think the Pittsburgh's coach Tomlinson is one of just amazing coaching. He has done more with less than anyone else I have seen in the NFL. You can give him. Tomlinson is the chop champion. Like on Food Network Chop, you give me your crap, I'm going to make you a meal. I'll get you to the playoffs. You may not be full, you may not be full, but I'll this quinoa and asparagus salad I just made you. It'll be good enough to get you there. It may not put you over the top. That's Pittsburgh nowadays.
Mm-hmm.
There are some other teams that I think are also good fits for Russ. And when you start thinking about that, with what has happened with the Raiders, with them getting rid of Jimmy G, And I think they're a lot closer. I like Russ going to the Raiders. I think that's a nice landing spot for him. But I say, Atlanta, that's another place. They got their eye on Kirk Cousins.
Hmm.
They got the guy on Kirk Cousins. I also think Kirk Cousins Pittsburgh is an amazing spot. Kirk Cousins would be my top choice. That's my free agent quarterback. Kirk Cousins is one, and people are looking at it and saying how bad a year Russ had. Go look at Russ. Go look at Russ's stats. Russ had a pretty decent year. He
Hmm.
wasn't Russell Wilson Pro Bowler
Hmm.
year, but he was a very good starting quarterback in the NFL last year. The big story was he was surrounded by a not very talented team, managed by a not so well ran organization, and I know who the coach is, and a coach that I felt like was reading his own press clippings more than watching film. Um, and so I don't really feel like Sean Payton did, uh, the Denver Broncos justice. I thought Denver was good enough to contend for a playoff spot, but he sabotaged it by threatening to bench Russ if he didn't redo his contract, and then eventually benching him, which none of this was in the best interest of winning games. And
Yeah.
then cutting Russ, where now you got $80 million dead money on your salary cap. If you're in Denver and you're wondering what happened to your franchise, go look at your coach because he's the one that destroyed it. Minnesota's another place I think would be a good spot, a well-run organization, but also if Kirk Cousins goes somewhere else, that is a perfect slot because they're trying to make the playoffs. Russ would be a good fit there. So
Hmm.
those are the teams that I think would be, I forgot about New England. New England as well. I don't quite know what to expect with New England. New England has a situation where they're transitioning from the Bill Belichick. First, they're getting over losing Tom Brady. They're getting
Yeah.
over now. They're transitioning from Bill Belichick. You never want to replace a Hall of Famer. You
Hmm.
never follow a Hall of Famer, let alone doubling up. Tom Brady leaves. Now you're going to have Bill Belichick leave. That is not the franchise I'd want to go to because it is still too close to, hey, when we had Belichick and Brady together, we were winning championships every year.
Hmm.
So even when you have a great year, it's still, and you didn't win, you need a few years of being in the dirt and then go in there and be the savior, not the guy that's supposed to keep status quo. So I'm leaving New England alone. But I think Pittsburgh should go for Russ. This whole Kenny Payne thing's crazy.
Well, there has been an update to this. Um,
Okay. If you
since
tell me that if you're like, breaking news, Russ just signed with the Steelers.
No, he hasn't signed with the Steelers, but since the publication of this information, it's been reported that the Steelers are in fact interested in signing Wilson, per the Pittsburgh Post Gazette. Jerry Dulick, also per Dulick, Pittsburgh plans to meet with him before free agency begins.
You know what
So,
happened? I actually know
hmm.
what happened. They were all sitting around. They decided they all went out to dinner and they came back and they're like, let's watch some of the games. Let's go back and watch the games. And they started watching the games and they just saw Kenny Pickett do Kenny Pickett things. And they're like, get Russ on the phone. Get Russ on the phone now. That's what happened.
Yep.
I'm sorry. You don't want to put your whole franchise. And listen, people are talking about getting rid of Tomlinson last year, one of the best coaches of all time. His people were wanting him gone last year, and you're gonna roll back there. If my job is on the line, I'm not rolling in there with no Kenny Pickett. Unless I want to get fired.
Mm-hmm.
But if my job, if it's like win or go home,
Mm-hmm.
I'm pulling Russ in. I'm pulling Kirk Cousins in. I'm pulling Jimmy G in before I pull in Kenny Pickett. Cousin Pickett gotta go. I'm sorry. I'm not rolling with him. Matter of
Mm-hmm.
fact, I'm sorry. Right now I think Mason Rudolph's a better quarterback. And that's the guy, that's who finished the season. That's the
Really?
guy. Yes, Kenny Pickett was injured. I get it. But that's who their own players want. Bring back Mason Rudolph.
Mm-hmm.
Future isn't Kenny Pickett. If you're this far into it and you're still wondering, do you think the Texans, the Houston Texans are looking at it like, man, I don't know if we really want that CJ Stroud. They know,
Mm-hmm.
well, we hit the jackpot. We got our franchise quarterback. If you went to the Texans right now and said, hey, you can extend CJ Strauss right now for the next 10 years, would you sign it? They would say absolutely. If you went to the Pittsburgh Steelers and said, hey, Kenny Pickett's up for a renewal, give 10 years, he wants 10 years, 55 million. Are the Pittsburgh Steelers signing it? Absolutely not.
Mm-hmm.
No way are they signing that. Because you don't have your franchise quarterback. Hey, I'll go another one. I'll take Baker Mayfield over Kenny Pickett. Insert your quarterback. Kenny Pickett is not the guy. If you're not screaming at your YouTube channel right now saying, no way, I'll take Kenny Pickett over Russ, over Kirk Cousins, over Baker Mayfield. If you're like, well, I don't know about that. If you're saying I don't know about that, then the answer is Kenny Pickett is not your future. And especially if you're thinking about it as a coach and you're thinking about, hey, they may part ways with me if I don't win this year.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going Penny. And Pickett, I do not trust. Go for Russ.
You heard it here first, guys.
And I'm not trying to be Mr. Hot Take guy. This is just the way it is to me.
Mm-hmm. Yep. All right.
All right.
Well,
Thank you.
with that, guys, we're going to take a quick break. And when we come back, we're going to dive into our Friday special of the dating horror stories. So we'll see you in a bit.
I like it.